What's up, y'all? It's your boy Showtimedr. I got a request. It was on SR Heroes. Someone wanted to know who the top tier heroes are if you're only considering SR heroes as far as... Because, not everyone's going to get the best roles, and perhaps you got an SR, you don't know, are they good, are they garbage, should I fodder them? So I'm just going to go through, what we'll do is we'll go through attacks, defenses, supports, and hybrids, and I'll give you my experiences. Now, keep in mind, I have not used all of these characters, so I cannot give you a definitive, like, tier list on who's definitely the best at everything. That, in certain synergies and stuff, there may be something I'm gonna overlook because I just don't have that character type or those characters that make that character just a god. But I will go over with you my experience on which characters that I have seen do really well, and we will just go from there. So, first of all, best hero in the game, clearly Theo. Nothing else needs to be said about that. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm not kidding. Theo, I'm sure he's okay, but we'll go with attacks for now. So, your number one attack, quite honestly, let me look. Make sure, because Saya's right there, but even... It's weird, like, they go back and forth, because they each have advantages over the other. And I'm trying to look here and see. Oh, yeah, there's a Risto, too. Well, I'm not going to put them in a definitive order, but I will tell you definitely the top 4 attack characters. This is probably a strong case for number 1 right here, Esmeralda. So Esmeralda, the cool thing about her is she is geared around crit damage. So leadership, light wind attack. There's light wind synergy out there, but so here's her basic passive. Increases critical strike damage by 20%. That's just base right there. Critical strike damage 20%. Counterattacks whenever the caster takes a critical strike. So if she takes a crit, she's gonna hit you back. And then when you get her 60, increases an additional 35% chance, or excuse me, additional 30% damage when the caster lands a critical strike. So clearly, you really want to gear this girl towards critical strikes. So assuming, because this is a base 50 right here, assuming you get the crit damage for set, and go ahead and just get her the crit damage 2, or crit chance 2 set. Get her crit chance as high as you can. And minimum, you're going to have 90% base crit once you complete the 4 set. So that's pretty strong right there. There's a lot of characters in the game that, or excuse me, there's only a few characters in the game that you can get that much crit on, considering runes and talents, etc. But she could just get it just like that, just like it's nothing. So now her 1 causes bleed, 30% attack for 2 turns. So you don't want to skimp on her attack when you can, but you definitely want to favor crit damage over her attack because her burst damage is going to be better than her sustained damage. It's just the way it is. Now right here on her 2, it's another 1 strike, but it's a 200%, going to get all the way to 320. And then she increases her own critical, or excuse me, her own counter attack chance. 3 turns when you get it all the way by 20%. So if she's getting focused, she has the potential to put out a lot of damage, assuming she can stay up, because her 1's going to be causing bleeds that are going to be taking for a percentage of her attack. Now on her 3, she's got penetration damage, so she's got some, she can go through Ghost Girl, penetration shields by Cordelia, Sid, etc. So, and then this gets all the way to 480, just like your typical. On a 5-turn cooldown, that's pretty strong. 5 turns, and then this is a 3-turn cooldown. So all of her skills come back pretty quickly, and especially if you're running her in a dungeon with, someone that's passively reducing skill cooldowns, or somebody that is like a Sid that can reduce cooldowns, or Karen, etc. So this character right here, potentially really nasty PvE or PvP. The only issue with her is PvP, or excuse me, PvE. She is one of the negative units in, I forget if it's Sinclair or Decane's dungeon, one of their dungeons. I think it's Decane's. Which is dumb, by the way, that shouldn't happen, because Saya gets bonus damage, and she can put out she can crit harder than Saya. I don't know about sustained damage, but she can crit harder than Saya. And for whatever reason, Netmarvel's just like, nope. So that right there is one of your top DPS SR units. Now, get to the other Saya. Saya is one I personally have. So the thing that makes Saya is this evasion thing. Don't sleep on it, by the way. You can get her. You can put her as leader with an Amon. Get yourself 60% passive dodge for your Amon. And also put her with Ian, or if you happen to have Ian and, which some people are doing, you know, you can get them both 20% evasion on top of their already ridiculous tanking buffs. She has a self-stacking buff called Dream Fragment, 40% chance every attack. If there are 3 or more Dream Fragments at the end of the turn, consumes them all. Make one random target sleep for 2 turns. Sleep, by the way, not only is it a debuff, but if you attack somebody while they're sleeping, it's an insta-crit. So, always keep that in mind. Ghost Girl, that's some mitigation for her. Just like her big brother, basically makes her immune to everything that's not penetration damage once she reaches 50% HP or below. For 1, you know, decent damage. Has a chance to actually inflict more damage to things that are sleeping. So if you see something sleeping, you need some burst or their turns coming up, go ahead and hit him with her 1, you know? Because she has a chance to inflict more damage on top of that, and then it's an auto crit, like I said. And she crits 4 on her 1 for me, and I have her built up pretty good. 6 purple stars, etc. She crit for like 40k on her 1. Didn't anything to sneeze at. On her 2 here, you know, inflicts damage equal to 110%. Attack to 3 targets, 25% chance to put them to sleep. As you skill that up, eventually gets to 176, and then 40% chance to put to sleep, so that's fairly strong. And then her ulti, this is the thing that makes her right here, ignores defense, 300%, and increases target skill cooldown. So if you're like in PvP and you're focusing somebody, and oh no, Rue's about to get a turn, I'm screwed, she's gonna res, you know, Ramu, and then Ramu's gonna res everybody, or whatever your situation is, they're gonna ult somebody and screw me over. Hit him with Psy ult. Even if they're like, you know, they got damage immunity or something, because she doesn't penetrate with this. Reset that skill cooldown. Give yourself some more time to get stuff done. This will go to 480. And man, dude, this hits really hard. This will crit for like on world bosses or dark dungeons or whatever. She'll crit you for like 20, 30k. I've seen people do 40k with her. You got to get, you know, the right buffs in the right situation, but... So, Saya is one of the better DPS units out there. I suggest, because she doesn't have any innate self-crit strike other than her talents. Gear her for crit strike chance, and it's up to you at that point for your foresight. I do attack percentage, but you could do crit damage too, it just depends. I just like to do attack because it makes the rest of her damage competitive, considering her ult. You know, it's a 5-turn cooldown, so he needs a little oomph in my opinion. But Saya and Esmeralda, they're both light deeps. They'll both do pretty solid damage there. So we're going to get into Advent heroes a little bit here. So another guy you can start to look at is Xenon. Xenon is a 3-star Advent hero with the rip-off Nightmare Sword, Soul Calibur. So the cool thing about Xenon, he's fire. He kind of works in the way Morgan works a little bit. You know, increases that crit strike damage, Fire Dark 20%, which I swear, doesn't Nemesis do that? Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Okay, so on his 1, he has the Berserker pass, or his passive rather. Removes all debuffs and becomes a Berserker for 3 turns when the caster's HP reaches below 30. Once per battle. While a Berserker, the caster's attack increases by 50 and Resolve is activated once, but they become uncontrollable, so... Pretty much works like Morgan's. I'm not sure if you get it on him, if you get immune to abnormal status on him before he berserks, if you can still control him or not. I don't actually have one. Anyone who has one, please let me know in the comments. I'm pretty sure it probably works that way, but you never know. You never know with games like this. So, but as you can see there, his attack is increased by 50 while he's zerking. Morgan, it's just her, she multis and counters every time, and then her damage taken is reduced 25%. So in this case, this guy actually zerks up and starts hitting harder. And then he has a chance to put Looming Death up. Looming Death, if you don't know, basically first turn does half your life whatever you got left. Second turn, it's gonna kill you basically, unless you got some type of cheat or it gets dispelled. So, and also he increases damage dealt to bosses by 30%. So any type of boss you're fighting, like a Kali or anything like that that's weak to fire, Xenon's gonna be chucking them, dude, just hitting them really hard. So, and then so his one here, decreasing recovery amount. So if you find someone that does recovery amount, like or that recovers with a resolve, you know, like anyone up in Taio's dungeon, Ronin, etc., you can just go ahead, you know, decrease recovery amount. And then this guy is what I call a finisher. So he increases attack damage if the target has 50% or lower HP. And as you skill up his one, if you notice, it gets higher, all the way to 40%. So that's pretty gnarly. It starts off at 15, gets to 40. It's increasing the damage mitigation and the chance to put up the anti-healing debuff, so his one's pretty nasty, honestly. Now his two, on a 3-turn cooldown, 200% damage to one target, 35% chance to increase target's buff duration. Higher you get it, you know, eventually you get the 320 base damage and then 60%. So 320 on a 2 for a solo is pretty gnarly, considering this is hitting 50% harder as well once you get it skilled up, or 40% harder. And then right here, Earth Split, this is his AoE. Damage equal to 180%, ignores defense to target 2 adjacent enemies. So pretty much it's a cone effect. On a 5-turn, gets up to 288. Hits pretty hard considering, you know, if you're fighting a boss hero like a Kali, you got this improved damage to bosses. You know, this guy just has the potential in PvE to hit you just ridiculously hard. So it's just a matter of supporting him properly and keeping him up. Now, there are 2 more units left, I would say, for top tier. Now, a lot of people are going to be mad at me because I'm not going to mention Renta. I guess I'll go over Renta. Renta actually hits pretty hard. So Renta's kind of, he's wind and he's poison. So, wind and light critical strike damage, 20%, you know, decent leadership. When attacking a poison target, so if you're running with like a Kali, or someone that poisons, 100% chance to inflict damage equal to 30% of attack when attacking a poison target. So that's there for you. 100% chance to poison the target for 2 turns upon successful critical strike chance. That's pretty cool. On his 60 passive there. Inflicts damage equal to 100% of attack to one target. 35% chance to inflict additional damage equal to 22% of attack. So the percent attack is going to be really key with Renta here. You could see. Critical strike damage as well. But this will get the 160, 60% chance to do damage equal to 45% on his 1. That can hit really hard. Right here on his 2, inflict damage equal to 110% of attack on 3 targets, 35% chance to poison for 30% of attack. Skill that up all the way. Goes to 3 turns on the poison, 176%, 60% chance to poison. And then, on his ult, inflict damage equal to 165% of attack to 3 targets. 35% chance to reveal weakness for a turn. Reveal weakness basically makes it so that any attack against that target while it's up auto crits. You skill it up all the way, you get it to 2 turns, reveal weakness, on a 6-turn cooldown. So that's pretty gnarly, especially for running him with a Sid, or someone that reduces cooldowns. So Renta, he's right up there. The only thing about him is he relies on poison and inflicting his own poison. You know, not necessarily his specialty. If he crits, he'll put the poison on, and then he has chance for poison on his 2, but you're relying on him critting, which not always going to be the case. His ult does help with that a little bit, but that it's not going to affect him for the most part, because mobs take turns, PvE enemies take turns quicker than him. So he's not going to be able to crit off of his own debuff there. But if you get him with a team that can auto put up poison, you know, he'll do pretty good. So now we're going to get to, there's 2 more. And this guy is slept on by a lot of people, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure why. This guy's Aristo. Aristo, he is very unique. I will show you why. Light and water allies multi-strike chance by 20. Don't sleep on that. You can get that him and Tayo on the same team. And that'll go over pretty crazily. And, you know, light heroes such as Christian, etc. Saya, they'll do some extra damage there without multi. So this is the thing. He has the highest self-stacking buff in the game as far as stacks go. Lustrous Energy. Stacks increases his attack by 0.5, max of 100 stacks. So if you ever get 100 stacks, which you probably shouldn't, but if you ever get it for some reason, his attack is going to be increased 50%. That's pretty gnarly. Now on his 60 ult, acquires 10 lustrous energy at the start of the turn, so that's basically 5% additional attack. Activates resolve upon taking fatal damage, restores 10% HP once revive is activated once per battle. Once per battle. So this is weird because it says resolve, right? Activates resolve. Restores 10% HP once revive is activated. Now, does that mean revive on anybody or revive on himself? I haven't used them enough to know, so. But we'll show you what his 1 does. Now, his 1, 100% chance, or excuse me, 100% damage on one target. Requires 3 lustrous energy and an additional 1 to 3, so it's kind of roulette. As you skill that up, the basic lustrous energy, aside from the base damage, is going to go up, along with the chance to acquire more lustrous energy, all the way to 8. So you'll be getting 8. So let's say in a typical turn, once you got him built up, your man's going to have 10 lustrous energy, and then he's going to get anywhere from 1 to 8, along with a passive 8. So he's going to have 18 lustrous energy a turn, minimum. And then at least 19, probably. Somewhere in the realm of 22, 21, etc. Every turn, so that's pretty gnarly, especially if he gets a multi. If he gets a multi, you know, then you're getting 10 plus 8 plus minimum of 1, 2 more times. So plus 8 again is 36, or excuse me, 18, 26, and then 28 minimum. So if you're lucky, you'll get somewhere in the realm of 30 something per turn, which will make him pretty nasty, because 30 lustrous energy, that's an additional 15% damage, so that gets pretty gnarly. Now on his 2, Luster Buster, or Luster Buster, Luster Blast. That should be a move. Inflicts damage equal to 120% of attack to one target and 2 adjacent enemies. 25% chance to remove 1 buff. Consumes all lustrous energy to inflict additional damage equal to 0.5% of attack for each lustrous energy. So these are starting to get into the skills that consume lustrous energy. As you skill it up, the chance to remove a buff increases along with the base damage. Doesn't ever do anything with the lustrous energy percentages. But that's there for you if you just want to dump all your lustrous energy. You got 100. Or you got like 70, 60, whatever you're doing. So right here, on his 3, if you notice, his 2 is on a 4-turn cooldown. His 3 is on a 5-turn cooldown. So his 3 inflicts damage equal to 300% of attack to a target, and has a 40% chance to make the target unable to be revived for 2 turns. 40% on the level 1 version, which is pretty nice considering the revive meta we got in PvP right now. Consumes all lustrous energy to inflict damage equal to 0.5% attack. That ignores defense for each lustrous energy. So if somehow you got 100 or say 50 lustrous energy, this is on top of the damage. This is not a percentage of this damage. So once you get this skilled up, you are going to be doing, hold on, 480% damage, 70% chance to make target unable to be revived for 2 turns. And then consuming all lustrous energy for the 0.5%. So let's say you have 50. You know, that's going to be 25% of attack that ignores defense for each lustrous energy on whoever you're hitting. So if the 480% base attack doesn't kill them, and assuming there's no resolve or something dumb that keeps them alive, this ignore defense pretty much should do it if you're building him right. So it depends on how much lustrous energy you have. And, you know, you got a healthy chance to put unable to be revived up, so he's actually really good. And once again, considering the buffs to Holy, you know, this is a chance for you to get a Holy character or a light DPS that has unable to be revived debuff on them at a 70% clip for a solo on a 5-turn cooldown. So that's pretty gnarly. Now, the last attack character I will show you is Julie. Julie actually should probably be on my short list to build up. Because I want to run it with Tayo, but I'll show you why. So the cool thing about Julie, she is super powered girl, by the way, the Advent Hero 3-star. Water, Dark, Allies, Critical Strike chance. You know, that could be decent depending on what you're doing. Now right here on her regular passive, 100% chance to inflict damage equal to 30% of attack that ignores defense when attacking. So every time she attacks, 30% of attack is going to ignore defense, on top of 100% of whatever your normal attack is. So that's pretty gnarly considering that her ult is a hits everybody attack. So right there, that should show you a little bit of her damage potential. Ignore defense is fast becoming very important in the PvP meta currently, and it's just in general, just a great passive to have. Now on her 60, increase the caster and one ally's attack by 30% for one turn at the start of every battle, or on the casters every third turn. So if you're in, like say they eventually do come out with the fire advents at some point, and you got like long battles going on, you got a Tayo, say, as your other DPS, you know, there's a chance that she's going to not only increase her own damage, but increase Tayo's damage or whoever, because it's random, so not as good as... It would be nice if it said, like, increases attack characters, you know, attack, but we'll see how it goes, depending on... You know, but still, 30% of attack damage on whoever you give it to, it's always going to be good, so even if it's like a Rue or somebody. So right here, on her one beautiful hammer, 100% attack on one target, 35% chance to inflict damage equal to 25% of attack to the enemies to the right and to the, or excuse me, right next to the target. So the cone effect, you know how it goes. And then as you get it up, the base damage, the percent chance, and the damage inflicted to the people next to her go up all the way to 160, 60, and 40. Now her 2, this is what makes her kind of unique if you're fighting someone that's like really buff. So keep in mind, you know, she has that ignore defense 30%. Inflicts damage equal to 200% of attack to one target, 70% chance to decrease the target's turn speed. So essentially, you get the snare on, and you knock their turn back. But then this is hitting for 320% at 6, and it has a 100% chance to put that decreased turn speed on, and it's on a 3-turn cooldown. So you're running her in a dungeon with someone that reduces cooldowns, that's on a 2-turn cooldown. If you then run her with, you know, like I'm saying before, Sid, or Karen's probably the better example, because Karen's water. She's gonna have this up every turn, you know, assuming she's not stunned or she doesn't get hit with something that increases skill cooldowns. So that has the potential to be really nasty. Imagine that on a 1-turn cooldown, 320% attack, with 30% that ignores defense with her passive. And she's buffing her own attack by 30%. And, you know, you can go ahead and cycle the decreased turn speed. This has the potential to make her really nasty, honestly, depending on who you're running with. And like I said before, her ult hits everybody. Nothing super special, no penetration, no ignore defense, except for her passive already ignores defense, 30%. So as you skill this up, it'll get up to 192. 6-turn cooldown, so, you know, not available all the time. But considering that, once again, she's buffing her attack for a turn. So by the time her 4th turn comes up, or excuse me, it's her 3rd turn, 1st turn, 3rd turn, and 6th turn. This is on a 6-turn cooldown, so she should have increased attack percentage, assuming that you want to use this skill, every time she's going to use this, outside of skill cooldown reduction or some other crazy thing going on. So Julie would actually be a pretty gnarly hero, especially Water Deeps, because Water Deeps, it's fairly easy to get Tayo even if you're newer to the game. Esna's there, but other than that, you know, there wasn't a whole lot for Water Deeps, unfortunately, unless you want to go with the Ronin, which is an R unit, who's actually not too bad. So that's who it is for attack units. So hopefully you guys, you know, if you're looking to build up attack units, you're looking for some diamonds in the rough. Those 5 characters I just went over right there, all pretty good, depending on what you got going on with your own team. Now we're going to get to, we'll do supports next. So one of the supports I'm really high on right now, and I need to actually, she's on my short list to build, like probably my next character after I'm done with May. Lydia, the story hero. You're like, Lydia? You're like, Lydia? Why Lydia, Showtime Doctor? She's a story hero. You know story heroes are garbage? Well... She's got that increased water dark, max HP, 20% leadership. Underrated depending on if you need water tanks, which we probably will. Hopefully fairly soon. We don't have a 4-star fire advent yet, but we'll see how that goes. So the reason I say Lydia, she has a self-revive, 20%. You know, not bad. Now, she's one of the very few characters in the game that can do this. Remove one ally's damage over time effect at the end of the turn. Grants damage over time immunity to the ally for 2 turns. Now, I'm gonna have to actually see, excuse me there. I'm gonna have to actually see how that works because the way that's worded, it's a little curious. But I'm thinking of running her in Callie because if she can get rid of poison. Now, granted, Callie can poison a lot of people, but most of the time poison's on the tank. And that's the thing that's really screwing you up in the Callie advent is poison's on the tank. And you want to get rid of the brand, but poison's on the tank, so you can't directly heal the tank unless you have something that gets rid of the poison. Well, if Lydia can simultaneously get rid of the poison and make the ally immune to damage over time... Now, I'm not sure if that means immune to being debuffed with poison or a similar damage over time effect, or if it means the effect still goes on, they just don't tick for the damage. Which in that case makes me wonder, well, if you put a heal on that person then... Can you heal them even though poison's on them? But look at that, though. One ally's damage over time effect at the end of her turn grants damage over time immunity to the ally for 2 turns. That has the potential to really screw up Callie's DPS, because the thing about Callie is she's a hybrid. She doesn't herself deal a lot of damage, but she has so many ways to improve her damage. Brand, 30% additional damage. Poison, she's critting you 40% harder. And I'm just going by her kit. She's probably tuned much higher in her advent on the percentages. She can also, if she kills somebody with her ult, which of course she always kills everyone with her ult in there pretty much, unless you got some type of absorption or whatever, then she has 40% additional attack for 2 or 3 turns. I forget exactly how it goes. So if you can throw a cog in that cycle, you can effectively make staying alive a lot easier for your tank and throw a cog in her damage buffing. But, you know, on her 1, you know, she's going to heal water heroes more. This will get up to 10 and 10. So, yeah, depending if you're running with a Carolina or a Marduk, you know, that could get to be pretty gnarly. Now, on her 2, she has a revive. And it is a revive on a 3-turn cooldown, guys. A 3-turn cooldown. Now, one ally restores 50% HP base. Increased defense by 30%. Now, increased defense is a buff that is not very popular in the meta. But imagine, you know, you revived your tank, or you revive, say, another, you know, even a DPS, but it could be a support that's getting focused on, and you're waiting for cooldowns to come back, and you're blowing everything, and you're hitting defend. Well, this increased defense buff is really going to work into the advantage, especially for tanks or anyone that has high defense. And as you skill it up, you see the percentages keep going really high, 60%. You're getting 2% every time on the increased defense there. And then eventually you get to 100% HP and increase defense by 40%. That's gnarly, dude. That can be really gnarly, especially on a tank. So, 40% defense. Restores HP 100% on a 3-turn cooldown for a revive. That's pretty gnarly. Now on her ultimate here, 5-turn cooldown. Restores 20% of HP to an ally and 2 adjacent allies, so cone effect over time for 3 turns. And makes them guaranteed to counterattack once for 2 turns. As you skill that up, the percentage goes up till eventually it's at 35% to 4 turns. A 4-turn heal over time for 3 people, that's pretty gnarly. And makes them guaranteed to counterattack once for 3 turns, so that's there for you on a 5-turn cooldown. So I think she's highly underrated. And, you know, assuming you run her with either Ica or Demos, Karen, they're both water supports, you could get pretty gnarly water team going on there. So now I mentioned Ica here, so I'll bring her up. Ica, the cool thing about her is, You know, light water, max HP 20 on her leadership. She decreases damage taken for 2 turns at the start of the wave on herself. And 30% chance to charm the target for 1 turn when attacking. So she's got some passive charm going out. She's got a resolve for 1 turn, decrease damage taken by 30% for 2 turns if an ally excluding the caster takes fatal damage. That's pretty cool. That's decreased damage on the ally, by the way. And then if an additional, or excuse me, in addition, restore 50% HP once per battle. That's pretty gnarly. That's a little extra buffer there on top of like an aiming buffer or whatever you're running. And then it's the same thing with her. So she's doing increased water heal. So what's crazy is if you ran her and Lydia in the same team, their ones are going to be restoring like 40% health every turn because hers does 20 and then hers does 24 water heroes. So, but even if it's not water hero, 20% health on ones for characters, and then that's not assuming, you know, counters and multis, etc. So you might have, you know, assuming there's no healing debuffs up, you might have a pretty gnarly heal party going for your water units. And then 2, on her 2, it decreases damage taken by an ally and 2 adjacent allies by 20% at base for 2 turns. And restores 25% of their HP. The higher you get it here, eventually it'll get to 30% for 3 turns. And then restores 60% of HP on a 3-turn cooldown. So considering the decreased damage taken is 3-turn buff on a 3-turn cooldown for 3 units, that's actually pretty strong. And then 60% of HP once you get it leveled all the way. So that can turn into a really nasty 2. Now her ult, this is what I think makes her. At base, it's restore 35% of all allies' HP and increase their max HP by 30% for 2 turns. Increasing max HP is something very rare in this game. So this will eventually, as you skill it up, the heal goes to 70%, and increasing max HP by 50%. So like I said in another video, I want to pair this up with like Sid or someone that has a percentage HP shield. Might be a self shield, might be a buff shield. Carolina, by the way, has a shield like that, I believe, and so does, I forget his name now, the chess master, Liberto, I believe he is. So if you pair those characters or those types of characters with Ica, you can actually get some pretty fat shields going on. And assuming there's no penetration damage, that could be pretty gnarly for your survivability for your team. This is on a 6-turn cooldown, 2-turn effect. So gets to be pretty nasty, but Ica's underrated in my opinion. Now, another support that's underrated, actually this girl. This is Esther, the dark support in the game. Makes her kind of unique. Plus she's pretty guys, look at her. Got that fan out. She cares about what she believes in. So recovery amount for Dark and Wind, you know. Could be useful depending on if you got a recovery amount dungeon or whatever. Right here, her passive, decreased damage taken from 5 target attacks by 20%. You know, could be really nasty, or good rather, depending on what you're fighting against, like a Britain dungeon. Restores the caster's HP by 20% when the caster heals an ally. So basically, whenever she throws out a heal, she's healing herself as well. That's pretty cool because her 1 heals, her 2 heals, and I don't know if it counts her 3, because her 3 is a revive and a heal, but we'll get to that. And then she has a self-revive, you know, 50% on her 60. So her 1, you know, it's your typical restore additional HP, but it's for dark units. So if you're running a dark team, that's there for you if you want that extra healing. Now on her 2, restore 1 ally's HP by 35% at base, increase the caster's recovery amount by 20%. The caster's recovery amount, by the way, guys. Not the person she's targeting. For 2 turns, though, on a 3-turn cooldown, so that gets pretty gnarly. As you skill it up, she'll increase her recovery amount by 3 turns, 20%. So the percentage never goes up, but the turns in effect does, and then her heal goes to 60%. So once again, as she's healing herself 20% here, she also gets that passive recovery amount. So if you're running her with a little bit of recovery amount runes, she should be able to keep herself up without ever having to target herself, in most cases. So that's a unique thing to Esther here. Now her ultimate, it's a revive. It revives up to 2 allies, restores 30% of their HP. It's a 7-turn cooldown, so it's pretty long. As you skill it up, gets to 50%, and eventually 60%. Unfortunately, it doesn't bring up the number of revives, but that's there for you. You know, she has revive, she has pretty strong staying power as far as she goes, and as far as throwing out heals for dark teams. So, she's there for you to consider. And then honestly, I believe that's it for supports, yeah. Alright, so we will get to... Should we go for hybrids or... To be perfectly honest, I don't really know too much about hybrids. There are some decent hybrids. I think I'll just skip hybrids, because the ones that I know about, the only reason you use them most of the time is because of dungeon bonuses, so... Yeah, well, pretty much. I guess we're just gonna have to skip straight to... tanks, unfortunately. Alright, so let's get to tanks then. And by the way, guys, share your experiences. If there's one of these heroes, especially ones I don't hit, that you really like, you know, go ahead and put in the comment section below what your experiences are and why they're good. So Cordelia, a lot of you should be familiar with Cordelia if you've seen the Taio Advent. Cordelia, arguably the best tank. Not necessarily for wind anymore because Ian's come out, but still a very strong tank. She's the regen queen. Her leadership, wind and light defense. That can go really well if you are running the Taio Advent, because defense is neat in there if you're newer to the game. Right here, so this is Syrian Rage, that's her self buff. Basically 50% chance to get it upon dealing or taking damage, max of 3. For every Syrian Rage buff she has, she restores 3% of her HP passively at the end of her turn. Really strong in Taio's dungeon, by the way. Honor 1, you know, does damage, does cone effect damage, by the way. 30% chance to taunt for a turn. And with 3 or more Syrian Rage stacks, inflicts 10 additional damage equal to 10%. Her damage really isn't that, what she's there for. She's there for her tanking, her taunting. So if you're doing extra damage, that's great, but... Honor 2, damage immunity for all allies, removes all debuffs from caster. With 3 or more Syrian Rage stacks, consumes all stacks to grant a shield equal to 20% of the target's max HP for her turn. So pretty much you use this whenever there's about to be a big alt, non-penetration alt. Otherwise, like World Boss, it actually works out pretty good. That big Leviathan-looking guy. If you can time it right, this works out well. Or if you really need to get rid of debuffs, like, you know, Looming Death and Rue's turn isn't coming fast enough, or whatever you got going on. And gives her a little shield, you know, so... Not bad. As you skill it up, her shield basically goes to 50% max HP for 2 turns. And then the damage immunity will last 2 turns, but the problem is it's a one-time use, so it's not like you're damage immune for 2 turns. On a 4-turn cooldown, it's pretty strong. Honor 3, it's a AoE, 5 target. 120% damage, all enemies. 35% chance to decrease their defense by 30% for 2 turns with 3 or more Syrian Rage stacks. 25% chance to expend all stacks to stun targets for a turn. It's on a 7-turn cooldown, guys, and as you skill it up, the percentages all go up until eventually you get the 3 turns on the decreased debuff, or decreased defense debuff. And then 192% chance, or excuse me, attack on all enemies. And that's a 40% chance to expend the Syrian Rage stacks for the stun. So sometimes that's really good, like you need to burn, like say AoE damage immunity or something like that, then you know, you can do that. Get rid of it for her so that your DPS or your CC can follow up. And pretty much she's known as the regen queen. You can take her into Taio dungeons or any type of water dungeon. She'll do just fine for you most of the time. But Cordelia is really strong, so what other tanks here? I'm not gonna put Alfred on the list because we got Eamon now. Although, well, yeah, you don't really need Alfred for the most part, because a holy tank You know, Holy, they're going to take additional damage from Dark and then base damage from everything else, so... But then you can get other tanks that do that for pretty much every other elemental. The heck, isn't there another tank I was thinking of besides Liberto? Where's Carolina? Maybe I skipped over her. I'm sorry. Yeah, here she is. Okay. So Carolina. So cool thing about Carolina, you know, max HP for water and fire, which is a funny synergy, but it can work. So she has a self-resolve upon taking fatal damage. Restores HP of all allies by 20% once resolve is activated once per battle. So not herself, but she will stay up for that extra hit. Grants a shield to an ally on her 60 equal to 50% of their max HP for 2 turns when they take damage that causes their HP to drop below 50%. So that can be pretty powerful depending on who it's going on. It's a 50% percentage of their HP. That's pretty cool. On her 1, you know, it's your typical 1 target. Grants a shield to 1 ally equal to 2% of caster's max HP. So it's not a lot, but it's there. And it's mitigating damage, so that's pretty gnarly. And once you get it skilled up more, you know, the base damage goes up, and then her shield gets to 7% of caster's max HP for 2 turns. So it's the casters, so it's Carolina's, and Carolina should be built with a lot of health. Because as you can see, you know, percentage health. Well, not on that one, but on this one. Oh, actually, no, I'm wrong about that. Well, anyways, it's percentage health on her 1. And then on her 2, this is a guaranteed taunt. So on her 2 is a guaranteed taunt, 1 target, 1 turn. Grants a shield to the caster equal to 50% of their HP, so that's where the HP comes in for 2 turns. And removes all debuffs from the caster. So, how you get it up, by the way, on a 4-turn cooldown. Look at that HP go up until you get to 75% of her HP for 3 turns. And then it also taunts the target for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. So that's pretty strong. A guaranteed taunt, 2 turns, 4-turn cooldown. Considering that her 1, the maximum you can get it to. Or her 1 actually doesn't even taunt. So. And then right here on her 3, Monsoon. Inflict damage equal to 120% of attack to all enemies. 35% chance to decrease their attack by 30%. For 2 turns, the more you skill it up, you know, the percentages go up per usual to 192 to all enemies. 60% chance to decrease their attack by 30% for 3 turns versus 2 turns. So that gets pretty gnarly. That's weird. I wonder why all of a sudden... You see that? Like, it's the same percentages and stuff. It doesn't look like there's any type of extra space, but then all of a sudden, attack goes up here for whatever reason. Oh well, anyways. So she's pretty good. Her taunt's on her too, so you basically, you need to get this skilled up pretty quickly. So you can have the taunt for 2 turns, and then people are just going to have to eat it for those other 2 turns unless you can get her cooldown reduction, which, if you're running her with like a Karen or a Sid or whatever, you should be able to get her, you know. So pretty much if you run her correctly, you can pretty much have her guaranteed taunt because Karen will be there, increasing her turn count. And then... you know, run her with someone that gives us cooldown reduction, so... But Carolina's pretty good. And the superior tank, by the way, to Marduk. For those who don't know, for water. And now we get to Liberto. So Liberto's going to be the last hero I'm going to talk about as far as SR tier units go. Liberto is very underrated. It actually has a pretty hard dungeon for a 3-star dungeon. Increases light and dark allies' critical strike damage by 20, which is kind of interesting. So on his passive here, King's Power increases the caster's counterattack chance by 20%. Which is strong, by the way, because Brand is on his 1. So Brand, for those who don't know, increase all sources of damage by 30% as long as it's up. And even at turn 1, it's up for 2 turns. Or at skill 1, rather. It's up for 2 turns. Becomes immune to damage for 2 turns when allies' HP drops 50% or below. I guess that means he becomes immune to damage, or does it mean that the ally becomes immune to damage? Either way, I mean, still good either way. Activates 2 times per battle, by the way, so that's pretty strong. Now on his 60 passive, activates Resolve upon taking fatal damage. Grants a shield equal to 30% of HP to all allies, excluding the caster for 2 turns once Revive is activated. I don't know if this is another mistranslation thing, but pretty much Resolve, you know how it goes. He resolves, he throws out the shields, 30% of HP to all allies, excluding himself. And that's once per battle. So on his 1, inflicts damage and also puts up brand, single target. Higher you get it, higher the chance for the brand, and the higher the base damage. On his 2, Knight, it's a 3-turn cooldown, taunts all enemies for a turn, guaranteed taunt. Grants the caster a shield for 20% of HP for 2 turns. As you scale it up, you know, the percentage shield HP percentage goes up until it gets to 30%. And that's on a 3 turns cooldown, so that's pretty strong. And then his ultimate here, Checkmate, inflicts damage equal to 120% of attack to all enemies. 100% chance to decrease recovery amount, so basically prevents healing. 100% chance. To all enemies, by the way. Or, excuse me, any targets with 50% HP or below for 2 turns. So it's kind of like a finisher type move here. And as you scale it up, you know, just the base damage percentage goes up. So you can get that pretty strong. Considering the types of runes that are up, you can run them with taunt runes. You know, get his HP as high as you can. And it gets pretty strong, but as far as tier for the tanks go, Cordelia is going to be your number 1. And then depending on how you gear them, you know, Liberto and Carolina can both be tied for number 2 as far as I'm concerned. Just depends what you choose to build them with. Supports as well, I guess I didn't really rank them. Your number 1 support here, honestly, probably going to be Lydia. Because Lydia offers a skill set that's pretty unique, while also conforming to a lot of the meta stuff. And then, you know, extra HP stuff and damage reduction for Ica. Esther is probably bringing up the rear just because it's dark, and dark's not super strong right now. It's pretty good, but you have to build it like a certain slow DPS build. So yeah, I guess that was pretty much it. So there you go, guys. As far as the SR tier list goes, there's other SR heroes, and I'm sure you can make them work, but I haven't seen them work. Like, for instance, I've actually seen a pretty decent O'Hara DPS before. One of my guildies actually runs her. And she can actually put out the deeps pretty good. The only problem with her is Explosion is a garbage debuff. Doesn't really do any damage despite everything. But otherwise, yeah, Spin Shot's actually pretty OP. But that's a topic for another video. She's AoE damage if you guys want to experiment with her. And yeah, so that is that request done. So trying to think. If you guys, I've been looking for other games to play, guys. I'm still gonna play Knights Chronicles, don't worry about that, but I'm looking for other like gacha or phone RPG type games. It doesn't have to be hardcore RPG, just have RPG elements. So it could be a shooter, it could be a racing game, I don't care, as long as it's fun and something you think I'd be interested in, let me know. You know, I don't care what the aesthetic is, it could be space, mecha, ninja, cowboy, I don't care. Shooter game, as long as it's fun, that's all I want. So anyways, guys, I am Showtime Doctor, Showtimedr on Twitch. You found my YouTube, look in the notes, there's a link to my Discord there. You can come in, share your experiences, give advice, ask for advice, just chill with the community. We have a good community. It's one of the things I take pride in, actually. A lot of good people in there. And when bad people come in, we just kick them the hell out because they're garbage. So, but for the most part, met some really cool people here, like 98% of you. And yeah, so that is it for me today as far as videos go. I will be thinking of more videos and stuff to do, and definitely look forward to Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, depending on where you are. There will be, you know, the patch with the patch notes and the preview and all the new events. So I'll go over it with you and keep you abridged of what's going on. So Showtime Doctor signing out. Farm hard, get strong, be buff. Have a great day, guys. Take care.